It's been about 5 months since I first ran in the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. And since then, I've been reaching for it for threshold repeats, long runs, and marathon racing. So now it's time to talk about the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo after 100 miles. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I want to talk to you guys about the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Tokyo after 100 miles. But before I give my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that was provided to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their brand in this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo after 100 miles. And for these follow-up reviews, I like to start with how I've been using the shoe. This is a shoe that I've been reaching for whenever I want to go fast. I've been using it for three main types of work: threshold work, long runs, and marathons. So for threshold work, I've been using it for mile repeats or longer threshold efforts. I also took it on long runs as I got ready for a marathon. And a lot of times for my marathons, I like to include some marathon effort work. So I like to make my long runs workouts as well as long runs. And then I raced the Sydney Marathon in it earlier this year, and I thought it was a fantastic shoe to bring along for that race because I think the shoe is a great combination of cushion and speed. And while I generally like my marathon racing shoes to be a little bit on the aggressive side, I still like there to be a bit of softness there. I don't want it to be a very firm shoe. I also don't want it to feel like an old school race flat. I want to feel like there is some dynamic movement of the foams as my foot hits the ground. I want the foam to compress, and then as my foot pushes off of the ground, I want to feel a snapback of the shoe. And I feel like the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, with its two different foams, there is an FF Turbo Plus layer on the top in the Sky, and then there is a bottom layer of aliphatic TPU. I think that those two layers are working together really well to create that level of impact absorption and then also a bounce back that I'm looking for with every step. The upper has been feeling great for me on this shoe. It's an upper that I feel like I can be in for a long time. And I've been running in all of the Metaspeed series since the shoe first came out. And the upper has been an evolution over the years. Nothing that's ever been really drastic, but each year the upper gets more and more comfortable while still maintaining that level of kind of snug, like locked in feeling that I'm looking for in a marathon racing shoe. And I do think that this upper and the Tokyo edition is probably the most comfortable of the racing uppers that I've seen from ASICS yet. Now, I mentioned how much I'm liking the foams on this shoe, but I also have been really enjoying the lightness. I feel like lightness is the new frontier in marathon racing product, and I feel like ASICS has done a very good job in keeping this shoe exciting to run in, the kind of shoe that I want to run in, and also keeping the weight extremely light. It feels like I can fly whenever I'm in the shoe. And the shoe feels great when I'm running fast, and it also feels great when I'm running fatigued, which is really important for a shoe that you're going to be running in marathons, because at the end of the race, you're going to be hurting. For me, the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo worked out exceptionally well. Now that we talked about how I've been using the shoe, let's talk about how the shoe has been holding up. Now, we can take a look at the shoe and see that there's a lot of creasing in the midsole, but I think we all know now by 2025 that creasing is not a sign of excessive wear. In fact, at the 100-mile mark, I feel like this shoe has plenty of speed left in it. I'm enjoying the amount of cushion that this shoe still has, and I'm enjoying the amount of bounciness that this shoe has. I think there's plenty of workout and racing miles left in the shoe. Now, the Metaspeed Sky Paris was a shoe that was a touch on the too soft side for me by just a tiny little bit. And then I found that as the shoe aged, that shoe got a little bit mushier over time. But with the Tokyo edition of this shoe, I enjoy the balance of softness and bounciness in the shoe, and I feel like that balance has been steady throughout the life of the shoe so far. As far as wear and tear on the upper goes, this shoe is holding up exceptionally well. It's really light and breathable, and despite the fact that I've been dripping sweat in buckets into the shoe actually still smells pretty nice. The only amount of visible wear that I can actually see on the shoe is in this heel color back here. ASICS went to great lengths to try and keep the amount of material that's back here to a minimum in order to save weight. And there's a little bit of kind of, not fraying, but this little edge that's beyond the seam of where they've sewed it back onto itself. It's starting to come up a little bit. It's not frayed, it's just kind of like curled up a little, and that's really the only sign of wear here. Inside the actual parts where there might be some friction, this part of the material isn't fraying or wearing down, so it's all looking still very fresh. Moving to the outsole, that's where we're seeing a lot more visible signs of wear, and where I'm seeing the most is in this little triangle that they cut out at the forefoot of the shoe. That's an area of exposed foam where you're running directly on the ATPU, and that part is definitely taking a beating, which I think is kind of what it's supposed to happen with this shoe. They've cut out that part of the rubber on the outsole to give the foam some more room to expand as your foot hits the ground. But as it's hitting the ground, that foam is going to be rubbing directly against the asphalt. And so this part is seeing a little bit of wear, but no large gouges or chunks. And so there's been a little bit kind of shaved down as I've been running, but overall the foam is doing well. A lot of the other exposed areas of foam are just discolored from being outside and running on the roads, but no major signs of wear there. Inside all these little holes that are cut into the rubber outsole that give it that grip, there is like one little crease inside each one of these holes. So it looks like there's a bunch of coffee beans on the bottom of my shoe at this point. But again, that's just an element of cosmetic wear. I am seeing some wear in the rubber though, and it's mostly around the edges of this cutout in the rubber. And so that area in the transition from the exposed foam to the rubber outsole, that's where I'm seeing a little bit of wear. There's still plenty of rubber left on this outsole, and I like the amount of rubber that ASICS put on this shoe to begin with. It was just enough, but not too little and not too much. Still feeling plenty of grip when I run in this shoe. There is also a little bit of wear happening on the outer edge of this pad on the heel, and that's pretty normal for me, but I'm seeing a lot less than I would expect for a shoe at the 100-mile mark. So overall, I'd say that the shoe is doing really well. For a racing product in 2025, and for several years now, I'm looking for about 150 miles of workout slash racing. So I want it to be race ready for about 150 miles. And then after that, I'm looking for hopefully to get about another 100 miles of workouts that you could get in a racing shoe. And I feel like that's where this shoe is headed. I feel like the durability is right where it should be, or right where I expect it to be for a racing shoe. Now let's wrap up this video by going over the buying guide, and we'll also go over some updated alternatives. The ASICS Metaspeed Sky Tokyo is a lightweight and fast yet cushioned racing shoe that I think will tend to work best for forefoot strikers. And while I think the shoe is balanced enough that runners from a relatively wide range of paces can enjoy this shoe, I do think that the shoe feels aggressive, and it's not a shoe that I would necessarily recommend for people who are heel strikers or who otherwise are looking for a little bit more stability in their racing shoes. This shoe currently retails for $270, which isn't a bad price, but it is a $20 tariff more expensive than this shoe was last year. And now let's take a look at some alternatives that are out there on the market to see where that $270 stacks up. Now, in the first review of the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, I gave you the Fast R3 and the Adios Pro 4 as potential alternatives to look at that are in about the same price category. And I still think that those are great options to also consider, but let me give you two more. And this time we're gonna go up in price just a little bit. The first shoe that I want to talk about also comes from ASICS, and it's a shoe that has now been released when it wasn't quite yet at the time I originally reviewed the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, and this is the Metaspeed Ray. The Metaspeed Sky has two different kinds of foam in it, whereas the Metaspeed Ray only has the aliphatic TPU, and it's a very dynamic version of aliphatic TPU that's in here. I'm getting a lot of compression, so the shoe feels really soft, but it's also springing back really quickly and working with just a teardrop shaped plate in the forefoot to keep things from getting too unstable, which the shoe is a lot less stable than the Metaspeed Sky is. It's even lighter than the Metaspeed Sky because it's only using the aliphatic TPU in this shoe, and the upper is even more stripped down than the Metaspeed Sky is. I prefer this shoe. I am mystified by the lightweight of this shoe, and I really enjoy just how much I'm moving the foam with each step. It feels like I'm getting so much softness, but also so much speed. It's kind of everything I like about the Metaspeed Sky taken to the max. And there are some differences in the geometry of this shoe, whether you're looking at the heel or the geometry of the toe spring at the front of the shoe. So it's not to say that it's just a Metaspeed Sky with different materials. And so if you are looking for something that's a little more unbridled than what we get in the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, I would have you take a look at the Metaspeed Ray, but you are going to pay for the rawness of this shoe, as this shoe comes in at a retail price of $300. And then the other shoe that I'd have us look at is from the Swoosh, and this is the Alphafly 3. Now, these shoes on paper are pretty different. The Alphafly 3 is a lot heavier, and it's using a PIBA foam as well as the giant Zoom AirPods in the forefoot. But I think beyond the facade, there's a lot kind of in the setup of each of these shoes that I think is pretty similar. The main thing that I like to think about in this shoe is the way that the Zoom AirPods interact with the carbon fiber plate. And I think because of the height of these Zoom AirPods, the plate has to start out kind of high in the back and stay high. And that's the similar kind of plate position and geometry that we see in the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo as well. And I also feel like the Alphafly 3, while this is also a very balanced shoe and heel strikers and forefoot strikers tend to be able to run well in it, I think that it's set up a little bit better for forefoot strikers, or kind of at least midfoot to forefoot strikers, based on where these Zoom AirPods are placed and then the way that the shoe aggressively curls up at the forefoot. And so I think that if you've been looking at the one, you will probably be interested in looking at the other, and vice versa as well. The Metaspeed Sky Tokyo is certainly a quieter and more agile type of shoe because it's smaller and lighter, but the Alphafly 3 has that run all day mechanical assist kind of feeling to it that I think a lot of you have experienced and have been enjoying. The Alphafly 3 comes in at a price of $295, so you're paying a little bit of a premium to get up to that shoe. So those are my thoughts on the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo after 100 miles. Very happy with this iteration of the Metaspeed Sky. Let me know if you have any questions about this shoe or any of the shoes that I talked about today, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. Love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?